I watched the crisp, new $100 bill flutter in the air for a second before it disappeared back into her designer purse. Isola smirked at me, her professional ring light reflecting in her cold, dark eyes like a pair of glowing circles. "Actually," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "the lighting was off for that shot. You're just not aesthetic enough for the generous influencer edit I'm going for today. I can't use the footage, so I'm keeping the tip." I stood there, frozen on her doorstep in the pouring rain. My clothes were soaked through, and my shoes were squelching with every tiny movement. In my hands, I held 2 heavy bags of premium groceries. I had paid $200 for these out of my own pocket because the delivery app had glitched at the checkout, and I didn't want the customer to wait. I thought she would pay me back and give me the big tip she promised in her delivery notes. Instead, she just adjusted her hair and looked at her phone. "You can leave the bags on the mat, and don't trip over the decor on your way out," she added. Then, she slammed the heavy oak door right in my face. I was a single mother, and that $200 was my rent money for the month. Now, I was left with a $0 tip and a notification on my phone showing she had filed a failed delivery report to get a refund. I felt like I was going to throw up. My heart was pounding with a mix of sadness and pure, hot anger. I turned around to walk back to my old car, defeated and wet. But as I stepped off the porch, I noticed a small, blinking blue light tucked under the eaves. It was a Ring camera. Isola was so busy acting for her own camera that she didn't realize the house's security system was recording her every move. My name is Petra, and 3 months ago, my life looked very different. I was a senior marketing executive at a top firm, wearing high heels and making big decisions in a glass office. But my world came crashing down when my husband, Ansel, did something unforgivable. Behind my back, he emptied our entire joint savings account, every penny we had saved for our future and our daughter's needs. He told me he wanted to invest it in his mother's failing clothing boutique to save the family name. He didn't ask me. He just took it, leaving us with nothing but debt and a stack of unpaid bills. Now I am a delivery driver, working 14 hours a day just to keep my daughter's expensive medical treatments funded. Every dollar counts, and every tip is a lifeline. I traded my business suits for a waterproof jacket and my office for a beat-up sedan. I was tired, I was stressed, and I was angry at the man who was supposed to be my partner. Ansel hasn't worked a real job in months. He spends all his time at his mother's shop, pretending to be a big businessman while I'm out in the rain delivering groceries to people like Isola. As I sat in my car, shivering and trying to wipe the rain off my face, my phone buzzed. It was a call from Ansel. I hoped he was calling to ask if I was okay or to say he had found a way to pay me back. But when I answered, his voice was excited for all the wrong reasons. "Petra, you won't believe it. My mom's boutique is finally going to be famous," he bragged. "She's hosting a huge influencer for a charity rebrand tonight. This is going to save us. Make sure you're home late. We need the house to be quiet for the after party." He didn't even ask how my day was. I finally got home, exhausted and still feeling the sting of Isola's cruelty. I walked into the living room and saw my daughter, Odalise, sitting on the couch with her tablet. She looked upset, her eyes glued to the screen. "Mom, look at this," she whispered, handing me the device. It was a live stream with over 5 million viewers. On the screen was Isola. She was sitting in a beautifully lit room, wearing a soft sweater, and she was crying. Real, heavy tears were rolling down her face as she looked into the camera. "I am just so heartbroken, guys," Isola sobbed to her followers. "Today I tried to do something kind. I gave a struggling delivery driver a $500 tip because she looked so tired in the rain. But instead of being thankful, she was so mean. She spat on my porch and told me my money wasn't good enough. I just want to spread love, but some people are so full of hate." The comments were flying by in a blur of rage. People were calling for the driver to be fired, arrested, and even doxxed. They wanted blood, and they believed every lie coming out of her mouth. I felt a cold shiver go down my spine. The porch in the video behind her looked perfect with flowers and a white railing. But I realized something instantly. It was a fake set. I had been at her house an hour ago. It was gray stone and cluttered with boxes. She was performing a scripted tragedy for clout. My daughter looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Mom, she's talking about you, isn't she?" I didn't know what to say. I was being turned into a national villain, by a woman who had actually stolen money from me. Before I could even process the live stream, my mother-in-law, Nomi, called me. She didn't sound worried about the lies being told about me. Instead, her voice was sharp and demanding. Petra, I need you at the boutique right now. The influencer is coming for the rebrand event, and the place is a mess. I need you to clean up, serve the drinks, and stay out of the way of the cameras. This is a huge deal for the family, so don't you dare embarrass us with that tired look of yours. She hung up before I could even say no. I drove to the shop, my blood boiling. When I walked in, I saw the posters for the event. The famous influencer Nomi had hired was none other than Isola. My stomach did a somersault. Nomi saw me and pointed toward a pile of boxes in the back. Get to work, Petra, and put some makeup on, you look like a ghost. I pulled Nomi aside, my voice shaking. Nomi, that woman lied about me on the internet. She tip-baited me and then told 5 million people I spat on her porch. She's a fraud. I expected Nomi to be shocked, but she just looked at me with a bored expression. I know what she did, Petra, Nomi said, crossing her arms. In fact, I was the one who suggested it. I told her that if she wanted to look like a saint for the charity rebrand, she needed a villain to compare herself to. You were the perfect choice because nobody cares about a delivery driver. You need to sacrifice a little for the family business. If this boutique succeeds, maybe Ansel can give you back some of that money you keep whining about. I stared at her, unable to breathe. My own family had set me up to be destroyed for a marketing stunt. I left the back room and found Ansel near the front of the boutique, setting up the velvet ropes for the red carpet. I grabbed his arm and pulled him into the alleyway. Ansel, tell me you didn't know about this, I pleaded, my voice breaking. Your mother told Isola to lie about me. They are destroying my reputation and making me a target for millions of people. Tell me you're going to stand up for me. I looked into his eyes, hoping to see the man I fell in love with, but all I saw was a coward who was afraid to lose his mother's favor. Instead of defending me, Ansel reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded legal document. He handed it to me without looking at my face. It's a non-disclosure agreement, Petra. Isola's team sent it over. They said that if you tell anyone the $500 tip was a lie, they will sue us for defaming her brand. They have more money than we do. They'll ruin us in court. Just sign it and keep your mouth shut. It's just a little lie, Petra. People will forget about it in a week. Think about the boutique. Think about our future. I looked at the paper, then back at my husband. You want me to sign a lie that makes me look like a monster? I asked. Ansel sighed, looking annoyed. I've already signed your name on a witness statement backing Isola's story. If you go against it now, you'll look like a liar and a criminal. Just play along, Petra. For once in your life, don't be so difficult. I realized then that I was completely alone in this marriage. My husband had forged my signature to protect a lie that was hurting me. I didn't sign the NDA. I walked away, a plan forming in my mind. I didn't go back into the boutique. Instead, I got into my car and drove back to the house where I had delivered the groceries earlier that day. I knew the house didn't actually belong to Isola. She was just renting it for her aesthetic videos. I knocked on the door, and a tall, thin man with messy hair and tired eyes answered. His name was Eamon, and he was a reclusive tech genius who actually owned the property. I told him my name and explained exactly what had happened. I told him about the tip baiting, the live stream, and the fake story that was ruining my life. Eamon listened in silence, his expression hardening as I spoke. I hate influencers, he muttered. She told me she was using the house for a peaceful cooking vlog. I didn't know she was using my porch as a stage for a smear campaign. I begged him for the Ring camera footage from the afternoon. I told him it was the only way I could protect myself and my daughter. Eamon didn't hesitate. He led me into his office, which was filled with glowing screens and humming servers. He pulled up the footage from the exact moment I arrived at the door. He didn't just give me the video. He used his high-end equipment to enhance the audio. The quality was crystal clear. In the video, you could see Isola snatching the $100 bill back, but the audio captured something even worse. After she slammed the door, you could hear her on the phone with my mother-in-law, Nomi. They were both laughing hysterically. Oh my God, Nomi, she looked so pathetic in the rain, Isola giggled. Poor people are just such great props for engagement. This charity rebrand is going to be so easy. I had everything I needed to destroy them both. I sat in my car in Eamon's driveway, holding the flash drive like it was a weapon. Part of me wanted to post the video immediately and watch the world burn around Isola and Nomi. But I knew that if I did that, Isola's fixers would jump into action to bury it. I had worked in marketing. I knew how they operated. I needed to play this carefully. I decided not to post the video to my own social media. Instead, I created a burner account with a fake name and no profile picture. I wanted to see how they would react when they realized someone was watching. I took a single, clear screenshot from the video. It was the exact moment Isola's hand, with its perfect manicure, was grabbing the $100 bill back from the air while I stood there looking devastated. I sent the image in a private message to Isola's manager, a man named Caius. I didn't include a long message. I just wrote, "The Ring camera was on. The audio is even better than the picture. What is the truth worth to you?" Then I turned off my phone and drove home, my heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. An hour later, I checked my phone. Caius had replied, but he wasn't worried. "I don't know who you think you are," he wrote, "but we deal with people like you every day. We have a fixer who makes problems like this disappear. If you try to extort my client, you'll be in a jail cell by morning. Delete the image and walk away while you still can." He thought I was just a random person looking for a payout. He didn't realize that I didn't want his money. I wanted justice for every person they had stepped on to get to the top. The night of Nomi's grand boutique opening arrived. The street was lined with expensive cars, and the air was filled with the smell of perfume and greed. Nomi forced me to put on a server's uniform, a plain black dress that made me look like the help. She handed me a tray of expensive appetizers and told me to circulate through the crowd. "Smile, Petra, and don't speak unless you're asked for a napkin," she hissed before rushing off to greet a local news reporter. I moved through the room, watching the wealthy guests celebrate a business built on stolen savings. Isola arrived like a queen, wearing a dress from Nomi's new charity collection. She was acting like a saint, hugging people and talking about how much she cared for the less fortunate. She spotted me in the corner with my tray and walked over with a smug grin. She leaned in close, pretending to reach for a shrimp puff, and whispered into my ear so no one else could hear. "Ready for round 2, peasant? I heard your husband signed your life away. You're lucky I'm letting you work this event after you spat on my porch." I didn't flinch. I just looked her in the eye and smiled back. "Enjoy the party, Isola. It's going to be a night you never forget," I replied softly. Isola frowned, confused by my lack of fear, but she was pulled away by Nomi for the main event. I wasn't going back to the kitchen to get more food. I headed straight for the tech booth in the back of the room. I had been the one in charge of setting up the digital slideshow earlier that day, and Nomi was too technologically illiterate to realize I still had the master remote in my pocket. Nomi took the stage, standing under a spotlight that made her look older and sharper than she was. She began a long, boring speech about family values, hard work, and the importance of giving back. She talked about how Isola had inspired her to create this charity line to help the struggling workers of our city. Behind her, a giant digital screen was supposed to be showing beautiful photos of the clothes. The room was silent as she reached the climax of her speech, pointing toward the screen with a grand flourish. Suddenly, the screen glitched. The beautiful photos of the boutique disappeared, replaced by a grainy, high-definition video. It was the Ring camera footage. The audio was pumped through the boutique's professional sound system, filling every corner of the room. The entire crowd watched as Isola snatched the money back and laughed. Then, the audio captured the phone call. "Poor people are just props for engagement." The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. I watched from the back of the room as Nomi's face turned from a fake smile to a mask of pure horror. Isola didn't even try to hide. She grabbed the microphone from Nomi's shaking hand, her eyes darting around the room until they landed on me. "This is a lie," she screamed, her voice cracking. "This is a fake AI-generated video created by that woman over there to extort me. She's been stalking me and trying to ruin my career because she's jealous. Don't believe a word of it." She was desperate, trying to use the AI excuse that so many people use now to hide the truth. But the damage was done. The reporters were already filming her meltdown on their phones. Just as the chaos reached its peak, a man in a sharp gray suit entered the boutique. He wasn't a guest or a reporter. He was a lawyer named Soren, and I recognized him instantly. He was the Sterling family's fixer. But he wasn't there for Isola. He walked straight past the screaming influencer and stood in front of me. He handed me a stack of legal papers. "Petra Sterling," he said loudly, "you are being served. Your husband, Ansel, has filed for emergency custody of your daughter, Odalise." I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. I looked at the papers, my hands shaking. Ansel was claiming that I was mentally unstable and dangerously obsessed with harassing celebrities. He used the AI video as evidence of my breakdown. He claimed that I was putting our daughter in danger by starting a war with a famous influencer. He was trying to take my child away to protect his mother's business. I looked over at Ansel, who was standing behind Soren, looking down at his shoes. He wouldn't even look at me while he tried to steal my daughter. Soren leaned in close to me, his voice a low, cold threat. "We have a series of emails, Petra. Emails you supposedly sent to Isola's team threatening her life. If you don't delete that video and sign a public apology right now, we will use these to ensure you never see your daughter again." I knew I hadn't sent those emails. They were fakes, created by Soren to bury me. They were playing a game with no rules, and they were using my child as a pawn. I felt a wave of pure, cold rage. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I walked out of the boutique, the legal papers clutched in my hand like a death warrant. I sat in my car, unable to stop my body from shaking. I felt like I was drowning. Just then, my phone chimed with a private DM on Instagram. It was from an account I didn't recognize. The message read, "I saw the leak. I know it's real. I have something you need. Meet me at the diner on 4th Street in 10 minutes. Come alone." I didn't know if it was another trap, but I had nothing left to lose. I drove to the diner and found a woman sitting in the back booth, her face hidden by a baseball cap. Her name was Leona, and she was Isola's former personal assistant. She told me she had been fired 6 months ago without pay because she knew too much. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick notebook. "This is my burn book," she whispered. "It has the names, dates, and amounts of every person Isola has tip-baited, cheated, and ruined over the last 3 years. She's a professional predator, Petra, but that's not even the best part." Leona leaned in, her eyes sharp. "Isola isn't actually rich. She's hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt." Leona explained that the aesthetic lifestyle was all a lie. Isola owed money to every designer and hotel in the city. And Nomi, she wasn't just hosting Isola for a rebrand. She was using the influencer's platform to launder money from her failing boutique to avoid paying taxes. They were two sinking ships clinging to each other to stay afloat. "The charity rebrand was supposed to be their big payday," Leona said. "If you take them down, they both go to prison for a very long time." I realized then that I had an ally I never expected. With Leona's help, I spent the rest of the night digging through the digital paper trail they thought they had hidden. We sat in Eamon's office, the tech genius watching in silence as we uncovered the truth. We found a secret bank account under Nomi's name, but the signatures on the deposits were Ansel. He hadn't just invested our savings, he had been the one moving the money to pay off Isola's secret gambling debts. He was trading our daughter's future for clout and a chance to be in the inner circle of a famous influencer. As I scrolled through the transactions, my heart stopped. I found a massive transfer of $50,000 to a man named Alaric. I looked at Leona, confused. "Who is Alaric?" Her face went pale. "He's the fixer Caius mentioned. He's the one who makes people disappear. Not literally, but he destroys their lives. He's the one who creates the fake emails, the fake police reports, and the fake scandals. He's the most dangerous man in their circle." Ansel had used our daughter's medical fund to pay a professional to destroy me. I felt a coldness settle over me. I wasn't just fighting for my reputation anymore. I was fighting for my survival against a professional criminal. I looked at the legal papers from Soren. The emergency custody hearing was in 48 hours. I had to act fast. I took all the evidence, the bank transfers, the burn book entries, and the ring video, and organized them into a single, devastating file. I wasn't going to play their game of secrets. I was going to bring the entire house of cards down on their heads in the most public way possible. The next morning, the fixer Alaric made his first move. As I pulled out of my driveway to go to my delivery shift, I noticed a black SUV with tinted windows idling at the end of the street. It followed me everywhere I went. Every time I looked in the rearview mirror, it was there, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I felt a constant, prickling fear on the back of my neck. I was being watched, and they wanted me to know it. They wanted to break my spirit before the custody hearing so I would look unstable to the judge. As I was dropping off a package at a suburban house, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It read, "Drop the Ring video or the kid doesn't make it to her doctor's appointment tomorrow. Accidents happen on the road, Petra. Don't be a hero." I felt my blood run cold. They were threatening my daughter. I immediately called the doctor's office to check on Odalys, but my hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial. I knew I couldn't go to the police yet. Alaric probably had them in his pocket too. I looked at the number the text had come from. It was a burner, but I sent it to Eamon. 5 minutes later, he called me back. "Petra, I traced the digital signature of that text. It didn't come from a burner phone. It was sent through a desktop application logged into your husband's work computer at the boutique." I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Ansel wasn't just a coward. He was actively helping them threaten our child. He had crossed a line he could never come back from. Isola, sensing that the public was starting to doubt her, decided to go on the offensive. She announced a truth live stream on all her platforms, claiming she was going to address the hater and the fake video once and for all. She held the live at the boutique, with Nomi sitting beside her, looking like a worried, elegant grandmother. They played the role of victims perfectly. They claimed that I was a disgruntled family member who was trying to steal money from them through a high-tech smear campaign. They even showed some of the fake emails Alaric had created. The comments were a war zone, but many people were starting to believe them again. "Poor Isola," one comment read. "She's just trying to do good and this crazy lady is stalking her." I knew I had to act. I didn't post a rebuttal video. Instead, I used a link Leona gave me to request to join the live as a guest. Isola, thinking she could humiliate me in front of millions of people, accepted the request. My face appeared on the screen next to hers. She looked at me with a fake, pitying smile. "Petra, why are you doing this to us? We just want to help you." I didn't show the Ring video. I didn't even mention the tip. Instead, I held up a stack of papers to the camera. "I don't care about your brand, Isola," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I care about my daughter. This is a list of her medical bills that my husband, Ansel, refused to pay because he was busy sending our savings to your secret gambling accounts. And here," I held up another page, "is the text message sent from the boutique today threatening my daughter's life." The comments stopped moving for a second. The silence was deafening. The shift in the comments was like a physical wave. People were no longer arguing about aesthetics or tips. They were looking at a mother fighting for her child's life. The holy image of Isola and Nomi began to crack in real time. Just as Isola started to stammer out another lie, a new player entered the chat. Nerissa, one of the most famous investigative journalists in the country, suddenly tweeted a link to the live stream with a message that went viral in seconds. "I have been investigating this charity rebrand for weeks. I have the full, unedited Ring video from the porch. It's worse than you think." Isola's face went pale under her heavy makeup. She tried to end the live stream, but her hands were shaking so much she couldn't hit the button. Nomi looked like she was about to have a heart attack. Nerissa wasn't just a random person. She was a giant in the media world. If she said she had the video, it was over. I looked at the screen and realized that Nerissa's profile picture looked familiar. She had the same sharp, intelligent eyes as Eamon. I realized then that Nerissa was Eamon's sister. He hadn't just given me the video. He had given it to the most powerful voice in the country. The mother-in-law from hell and the influencer fraud were now trending globally. The live stream ended abruptly as Isola's manager, Caius, finally realized the ship was sinking and cut the power. I sat in my car, breathing for the first time in days. The tides had turned, and the monsters were finally the ones being hunted. But I knew they were cornered, and a cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. I had to get home and make sure Odalys was safe before the final explosion. Ansel realized that he was on the wrong side of history. That evening, he came crawling back to the house, looking like a beaten dog. He tried to hug me, but I stepped back, the disgust feeling like a physical barrier between us. "Petra, I'm so sorry," he sobbed. "I was just doing what my mother told me. She said it was the only way to save the family name. I didn't mean to threaten Odalys, I swear. It was Alaric's idea to use my phone. Please, we can fix this. I'll drop the custody case and the lawsuit if you just go on camera with me and say you forgive Nomi. We can save the boutique together." He actually thought that after everything, the theft, the lies, the threats against our child, I would still play the role of the submissive wife to save his mother's failing shop. He looked at me with those pathetic, watery eyes, waiting for me to be the bigger person as I always had been. I looked at him and didn't see a husband anymore. I saw a stranger who had traded my soul for a chance to feel important. "You want me to forgive her on camera?" I asked, my voice devoid of any emotion. Ansel nodded eagerly. "Yes, we can say it was all a big misunderstanding. We can be a family again." "I'm done being your family, Ansel," I said. I reached up to the lapel of my jacket and unclipped a tiny, professional-grade microphone that Eamon had given me. "And for the record, I've been recording this entire conversation. Every word of your confession about the threats, the custody case, and your mother's orders is now on a secure server. You're not going to save the boutique, Ansel. You're going to help me burn it down." I watched as the last bit of color drained from his face. He realized then that the weak wife he had manipulated was gone forever. The next morning, I received a call from Nomi. Her voice was different, no longer sharp and demanding, but soft and pleading. She invited me to a family dinner at a high-end restaurant to settle things once and for all. She claimed she wanted to sign over the boutique to me and apologize in person. I knew it was a trap. Alaric wouldn't let her just surrender, but I also knew that this was my chance to catch them in a criminal act. I called Eamon and Nerissa, and we came up with a plan. I was going to the dinner, but I wasn't going alone. I arrived at the restaurant and found Nomi sitting with a man I didn't recognize. He was older, with a sharp suit and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His name was Bram, and he was a private investigator hired by Alaric. They acted like they were there to make peace, but I noticed Nomi kept looking at my purse, which I had placed on the table between us. While she was busy, crying about her mistakes, I saw Bram's hand move toward my bag under the table. They were planning to plant illegal substances in my purse and then call the police to have me arrested for possession. But they forgot one thing. I had been a marketing executive. I knew how to anticipate a competitor's move. I had 2 identical purses. While Nomi was distracting me with a fake apology, I used a moment when she dropped her napkin to switch our bags. I placed my real purse in my lap and put Nomi's identical designer clutch on the table where mine had been. I watched as Bram reached out and slipped a small, heavy packet into the bag on the table. He then sent a quick text under the table. The arrest was about to happen, but they were in for a shock. 5 minutes later, the doors of the restaurant swung open and 3 police officers entered, led by a captain who looked like he was in a hurry. They marched straight to our table, and Nomi stood up, her face a mask of fake concern. "Officers, thank God you're here," she cried. "I suspect my daughter-in-law is carrying dangerous substances. I saw her hiding something in her bag just a moment ago. I'm so worried about her mental health." Bram stood up too, acting like a helpful witness. They were so confident, so sure that this was the final blow that would put me in jail and give them custody of Odalys. The lead officer looked at me. "Ma'am, I need to search the bag on the table." I didn't protest. I didn't even stand up. "Of course, officer, please be my guest," I said calmly. The officer picked up the designer clutch from the table, the one I had switched, and opened it. He reached inside and pulled out the small, heavy packet Bram had just planted. But he also pulled out a wallet, a set of keys, and a gold-embossed business card. He looked at the card and then at Nomi. "Ma'am, this bag belongs to a Nomi Sterling. Is that you?" Nomi's face went from triumph to pure, blinding terror in a split second. "No, that's her bag, she must have. She switched them," she screamed, pointing at me. But the restaurant's security cameras, which Eamon had hacked into and recorded, showed the entire scene in high definition. They showed Nomi's bag on the table, and they showed Bram planting the drugs in it while she watched. The officers didn't hesitate. They pulled Nomi's arms behind her back and clicked the handcuffs into place. I watched as the mother-in-law from hell was led out of the restaurant in front of a room full of the city's elite. With Nomi in a holding cell, the entire house of cards began to collapse. Isola, hearing the news of the arrest, went into a total panic. She knew her charity rebrand was now a criminal investigation. She tried to flee the country, booking a last-minute flight to a non-extradition country. She posted a final, frantic video on her Instagram story, claiming she was taking a mental health break because of relentless cyberbullying and false accusations. She looked disheveled and desperate, a far cry from the aesthetic queen she had been just a few days ago. She made it all the way to her private jet at the executive airport, thinking she was safe. But as she was boarding the stairs, a team of FBI agents stepped out from the shadows. They weren't there for the tip baiting. They were there for the charity rebrand. It turns out that Nomi and Isola hadn't just been laundering money. They had been stealing the donations meant for the struggling families they claimed to help. The FBI had been building a case for months, and the ring video had been the final piece of evidence they needed to ground her flight forever. Isola was arrested on the tarmac, her designer bags spilling out onto the pavement. The video of her arrest, filmed by a hidden cameraman Nerissa had sent, went viral in minutes. The influencer saint was now a federal fugitive. I sat at home with Odalise, watching the news. My daughter looked at me, a small smile on her face. "You did it, Mom. You showed them the truth." I hugged her tight, knowing that the nightmare was finally coming to an end. But there was still one final piece of justice I needed to deliver. I decided it was time to release the full, 10-minute ring video to the world. Nerissa helped me edit it to make sure the message was clear. It wasn't just the tip baiting anymore. The video showed Isola's true character in every moment she thought she was alone. It showed her kicking a stray cat that had wandered onto the porch. It showed her laughing about how she hated the fans who pay her bills and how she wished they would just send the money and stop commenting. It was the ultimate, mask-off moment for the entire world to see. The video went viral globally. It was shared by celebrities, news outlets, and millions of ordinary people who were tired of being lied to by influencers. In less than 2 hours, Isola lost 4 million followers. Her sponsors dropped her like she was radioactive. Her entire digital empire, which she had spent years building on a foundation of lies, disappeared in an afternoon. She wasn't just canceled, she was erased. People weren't just angry, they were disgusted. The woman who had tried to make me a villain was now a symbol of everything wrong with social media. I watched the subscriber count on my burner account, now renamed The Truth Project, climb into the millions. I didn't want the fame, but I wanted the reach. I posted a single message. The truth doesn't need a ring light to be seen. It just needs a mother who won't stop fighting. The comments were a sea of support and apologies from people who had initially believed the lies. I felt a deep, satisfying sense of catharsis. I had been a failed delivery driver to them, but now I was the woman who had brought down a giant with a single camera. With Isola and Nomi facing federal charges, I turned my attention to the last monster in my life, Ansel. I didn't want a misunderstanding or a reconciliation. I wanted a clean break. I met him at a lawyer's office and handed him the final divorce papers. He looked at me with a smirk, thinking he still had a card to play. "Go ahead and divorce me, Petra," he sneered. "I still have half of everything. Half the house, half your future earnings, and half the settlement money you're going to get from Isola. I'll be rich while you're still driving that old car." I didn't argue. I just pulled out a document from my folder and pushed it across the table. It was the fraudulent transfer clause from our state's marriage laws. "Actually, Ansel, you're entitled to nothing. Since you used our joint funds for illegal money laundering and gambling debts with Isola, you have violated the financial terms of our marriage. According to the court-appointed auditor, you owe the estate more than you could ever pay back. I'm not just taking the house, I'm taking your name off every asset we own. You're leaving this room with exactly what you gave me, nothing." Ansel's smirk disappeared, replaced by a look of sheer, pathetic terror. He tried to beg, claiming he was manipulated by his mother. I didn't listen. I stood up and walked out of the room, leaving him alone with his debt. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I had been carrying for years. I was no longer the supportive wife of a coward. I was a woman who was free to build a future for my daughter without a weight dragging us down. The divorce was finalized in record time, and I never looked back. The final battle took place in the family court for the custody of Odalise. Ansel's new lawyer, a man named Cedric who was even sleazier than Soren, tried to use my low income and unstable career as a delivery driver against me. He argued that a failed marketing executive, who was now delivering groceries in the rain, wasn't a fit mother for a child with medical needs. He painted a picture of me as a desperate woman who was bitter about her husband's success. It was the same old song they had been singing from the start. I sat at the table, my heart pounding, but I didn't have to say a word. Just as Cedric was finishing his insulting speech, the doors of the courtroom opened and Eamon walked in. He wasn't wearing his messy tech clothes. He was in a tailored suit, looking every bit the multimillionaire he was. He walked up to the judge and handed him a letter of intent. "Your Honor," Eamon said, his voice echoing in the silent room. "My name is Eamon Nerissa, and I am the CEO of Nexus Tech. I am here to confirm that I have hired Petra Sterling as our new head of global marketing. Her starting salary is 4 times what she was making at her previous firm," Eamon continued, looking directly at Ansel. "And her contract includes a full, platinum medical plan that covers every one of her daughter's treatments for life. She isn't a failed anything. She's the most brilliant marketing mind I've ever met, and she's the woman who saved my property from a fraud." The judge looked at the letter and then at Ansel, who was shrinking in his seat. The custody case was dismissed in 5 minutes. I walked out of the courtroom with my daughter's hand in mine, our future finally secure. A few weeks later, the final end of the Sterling boutique arrived. With Nomi in prison and the family name ruined, the boutique was vandalized by former Isola fans who were angry about the stolen charity money. The front windows were smashed, and the charity collection was piled in the street and burned. The landlord, a man named Pascal who had been one of Nomi's biggest supporters, finally had enough. He filed for a formal eviction and put the building up for auction to pay off the back rent and the property damage. I attended the auction, not because I wanted a clothing store, but because I wanted to close the chapter forever. I stood in the back of the room as the auctioneer called out the bids. Because of the scandal and the damage, no one wanted to touch the property. It was seen as cursed by the community. I raised my hand and placed a single, low bid. The room went silent. No one else bid. For pennies on the dollar, I bought the building that had been the center of my husband's betrayal and my mother-in-law's greed. I walked into the empty boutique the next day. The smell of smoke and broken dreams was everywhere. I looked at the spot where I had been forced to serve appetizers while being mocked. I didn't feel sadness, I felt power. I wasn't going to sell the building. I had a better plan for it. I was going to turn it into something that actually helped people, instead of just pretending to for a rebrand. I looked at the Sterling sign on the wall and pulled it down, watching it shatter on the floor. The old world was gone. Before I officially opened my new project, I decided to pay one last visit to the woman who started it all. I found Isola in a tiny, rented apartment on the outskirts of the city. She was out on bail, but she had no money, no fans, and no future. She looked terrible. Her hair was messy, her skin was pale without the filters, and she was wearing a stained tracksuit. When she saw me at the door, she didn't scream or lie. She just looked at me with a hollow, desperate expression. She begged me for a redemption collab on my new, massive platform. "Petra, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I can tell the world how you saved me. We can make a video about forgiveness. The fans love a comeback story. We can both be rich again. I just need one chance to fix my image." I looked at her, and for the first time I didn't feel any anger. I just felt a deep, cold pity for a woman who was so empty she thought a video could fix a broken soul. I looked at her messy room and the dim, flickering light on the ceiling. "Actually, Isola," I said, repeating the words she had said to me in the rain, "the lighting in here is off. You're just not aesthetic enough for a redemption edit, and there's one more thing you should know." I leaned in, my voice a quiet promise. "Eamon didn't just find the Ring video. He found your offshore accounts, too. The FBI has the keys to every dollar you tried to hide. You're not getting a comeback, Isola. You're getting a trial." I walked away, leaving her alone in the dark. She had tried to destroy my life for a generous edit, and now she had nothing left but the truth. 6 months later, I stood in front of my brand new office, the former boutique. The building was now a bright, welcoming space with a new sign, the Gig Workers Foundation. We were a nonprofit dedicated to providing legal help, emergency funds, and medical support for delivery drivers and gig workers who had been tip-baited, cheated, or mistreated by customers. We were funded by the recovered charity, money that Isola and Nomi had tried to steal. My daughter, Odalise, was standing beside me, healthy and smiling, her eyes bright with a future that was no longer a question mark. Nerissa and Eamon were there too, along with Leona, who was now our head of investigations. We were a team built on the ruins of a lie, and we were stronger than I ever could have imagined. I looked at the camera for my first and last YouTube video on the Foundation's channel. "My name is Petra," I said, my voice clear and steady. "They called me a dreamer, they called me a villain, and they called me a failure. But I was just a woman with a Ring camera and nothing left to lose. And today, we make sure no one else has to lose everything to a lie." The video went viral, not because of a rebrand, but because of a reality. I looked at my daughter and realized that the dreamer had finally made her dream come true. I wasn't a failed executive or a struggling mother anymore. I was a woman who had fought a giant and won, and I was going to make sure the world never forgot the power of a single mother with the truth on her side. I turned off the camera and walked into my new office, the sun finally shining on a life that was finally, truly mine.